Good evening. It is now 6 o'clock, and I welcome you to the Tuesday, January 29th, 2019 Wellfleet Board of Selectmen's meeting. We will begin with announcements, open session, and public comments. Any from the board?
Yeah, I'm going to make a quick announcement, which I'm going to repeat later on. On February 25th, here at the COA at 7 o'clock, a man called Scott Soros, who works for a group which has created pretty much this new group called the Massachusetts Shellfish Initiative. And he's going to come here. It's going to be hosted by the Shellfish Advisory Board and explain a little more about what this group is about.
What time?
At 7 o'clock here on February 25th.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? So I would like to announce briefly, we were in executive session this morning, and that we are negotiating with Dan. As many of you probably read the paper, he's going to stay with Wellfleet, and we are working on his contract. And we're all very happy about it. Except maybe one, but go ahead.
No, it's good. Continuity.
As I said, Jerry's not always happy. Okay, anybody else from the audience with an announcement?
Yes, I left at the table for all the selectmen the police annual report. It's a very in-depth report I've been doing since 2015 or so. We will be looking to post the report on our web page over the next couple of weeks. As soon as I get my web person to upload it to the system, we have the past ones there, so it'll be open and available to the public, and I believe Dan will post it on the town's website as well as things they've done in the past. So,
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Dick Gelkin, Chair of the Energy Committee. 2 points I'd like to talk about. The first is that the Energy Committee is considering requesting that you change its name and charge, changing the name to the Energy and Climate Change Committee, and the charge to include the parts of the comprehensive plan about climate change, which were not particularly assigned to any one committee. We feel that hopefully working with other committees in the town, we can contribute by being able to act on any suggestions that come through. Our committee is action-oriented. We have a lot of things going. We think we may need to increase the size of the committee as well. And so we're putting forth an article that town meeting requests the selectmen change the charge of the committee.
Okay, great. And did you have another announcement?
Yes, the second announcement, which you had alluded to, is I personally asked that the Board of Selectmen adopt a policy whereby town committees and boards can have remote participation with the option of opting out. And with that, those committees that don't feel it's appropriate, and I can understand it's not appropriate for everyone, but those committees can opt out, whereas those committees who would benefit from it can leave it, not opt out. We're now negotiating with Mia Baumgarten on the videotaping of committee meetings, as are other committees, and that setup requires that microphones be present so that all members of the audience can be heard. And so we're trying to work out a way to have both recording of committee meetings and remote participation. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I should make an announcement.
Mm-hmm.
We have an agenda item all the way at the end of the meeting that's going to be a very brief report about the Massachusetts Shellfish Initiative. It is not going to be a full explanation or discussion of it. It's just a quick highlight to supplement what Nancy Chavetta said at our last meeting during announcements. And I wanted to put that out there in case there are people in the audience that think it's going to be some kind of substantive discussion. I mean,
It
yeah.
does say discussion, yeah.
Yeah, well, it should have
All right.
said report,
Okay.
just a quick highlight.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the audience with announcements, comments? Very good. Then we will move on to the first public hearing, the Community Preservation Committee Annual Needs Hearing. one of my favorite reports.
Good evening. I'm Mary Rogers, Community Preservation Coordinator.
Good evening. I'm Gary Sorkin. I'm the chair of the CPC. As perhaps everyone knows, that we are charged annually with having a needs assessment hearing. We have 4 main areas that we fund, and those are housing, open space, recreation, and historic. And we have representatives from each of those interests in town on our committee, and they provide us with a list of needs, and then they put forward applications for funding, use of CPC funds for the purposes of those 4 areas. And so this meets our requirement in the legislation to have a hearing to assess whether those needs are current and meet the needs of the community.
So we're not going to go through all the needs. You have the list. There were some lists provided for the audience. I'll be posting it on the website. The community housing needs, very much the same. You'll see on number 8, there's a little change of emphasis into assessing the effectiveness of the Affordable Accessory Dwelling Unit program. This section was prepared by the Housing Authority and the Local Housing Partnership Authority. This and any section, if you have suggestions, that's what we're looking for in the hearing. Helen?
Janet?
Oh, do the chair.
So you're not, this is maybe it's not the first time, but are all of these projects you're working on, or are these all wish lists or ongoing things that the different sections are?
This is the wish list, the goals.
Right, and the answer is yes, Janet, Madam Chairman, because it's also what we are funding this year. So if you...
You are funding it this year?
We are funding some of those items this year. So I can go through and let you know what we are recommending to town meeting, or actually to the
Yeah,
Board
that
of
would be,
Selectmen.
that would be good. I don't know if you're prepared to do it tonight, but usually,
Just a preview.
okay, yeah.
But let
Did
me-
you have a question
I
regarding
did,
that?
regarding this section. Being very familiar with the affordable accessory dwelling units, what is the difference between that and an affordable dwelling unit?
So, we have a home rule bylaw in Wellfleet, which is an AADU bylaw. That's an affordable accessory dwelling unit. The ADU refers to just an accessory dwelling unit. It doesn't have the same affordability on it, and there is an effort within the county right now to consolidate the various ADUs and AADU bylaws into something more comprehensive. And their effort removes the affordability aspect of it. We haven't taken any position on it as of now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you just want to highlight what you're funding, because you've already, no, I mean, it does have to come before town meeting, but your committee's chosen what you're going to fund, right?
Sure, I can run down the
Okay.
list quickly for you,
Yeah.
if you like.
Finish the needs.
Are you talking about the needs list, or what we're recommending for funding this year?
Well, whatever you want to do, what's the difference?
We'll finish the
What you're
needs list.
funding.
We'll finish the needs list and then go to the projects that are
okay.
going to go forward to town meeting. So the open space needs list, the second list, with Conscom approval this year, this is considered like the perfect list of needs, not mixing it with projects, which is fine
All right.
if they mix with projects. So there was one slightly different take again on number 7, that they changed enhancing scenic vistas to protecting from development and for limited and appropriate public access land near the ocean, bay, and ponds. And so it says right there, Conscom had been involved as well as open space creating that list. The historic, oh,
Yeah, so Janet, I just suddenly realized there's something else I don't understand. So these needs, this wish list, if town meeting votes to give you, that chunk, on the back page, it says X amount for, housing, X amount for, right. Does that mean that then the housing authority, for example, or the housing partnership, can then use that money for any of the things in this wish list? No.
No, so,
You have to make a commitment. Okay, thank you, sorry.
so the process is, Madam Selectman, the process is that any organization that falls into the four categories, open space, historic, recreation, and housing, can make an application for funds to the CPC, and as long as they meet those guidelines, we will consider it. And then we will decide on what we can afford to fund and should be funding from those applications. So we're not actually funding the needs list per se, but the applications that come to us for specific programs.
Thank you.
Okay, so do you want to talk about the specifics? Sure. Unless there's,
Well, I just wanted to go through the rest of the needs list. The historic
right, okay.
preservation, I'm not doing item by item. The Historical Society is now working with the Historical Commission on a lot of these items that aren't even coming to, before us for CPA money. And in the recreation, that's very similar to what it was. There are items on this list that cannot be done with CPA money. However, they're on their needs lists as something that they want to do at some point with some funding other than CPC.
And maybe for the benefit of everyone, CPC funds come from an override on real estate taxes, on your local real estate taxes. So that's where the money comes from to fund a lot of these projects, for all these projects. So,
thank you, I was going to mention that too, yeah. So it is your tax-paying dollars that are paying for all these very nice little extra things, including housing.
indeed. So just looking at the list that you have before you that ends at the total of 266,500. So
Actually,
the,
they have the list with everything.
so the first thing is a housing specialist. We are now the only town on the Cape that doesn't have either a planning or housing specialist. So this is an effort to fund a position for the housing authority, not for the town, for a housing specialist to work on various projects. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I really hope that the CPC considers carefully your excellent use in the past of consultants for that and do a cost-effective analysis because, anyway, can we move to the budget part?
Sure. So that is the first application that we have before us for $75,000, and that has been approved. The second one, it's been approved by CPC, then it has to go to the board, and then it has to go to the town meeting.
This is a part-time person for $75,000?
Correct. It's not for a single year, number one. And number two is that we have had conversation with the town administrator that it should be a consultant and we're not creating an additional personnel position.
So this is what we did last year too with the housing.
So the consultant that we had 2 or 3 years ago was the person who did the needs assessment, does the buy down, does the down payment assistance, et cetera.
Yep.
Any other questions on that? So the second item is for $30,000, and that is for, we have historical records in the town of all of the
So
houses.
you do have different numbers and stuff than we
No,
do.
it's over here.
Oh, it's over there?
Yeah.
All right.
The first column is their original request. We had money and encouraged people to expand some of their projects.
Okay, all right, got it.
So if you look at the historical plan for Wellfleet, every house that is over 100 years in age has a historical record, and the Historical Society uses this both to protect and promote maintaining those homes. And they're really old and really poorly done records, so they're going through, and they've hired a consultant to go through and redo a bunch of those records. The other thing that we're hoping to do with the money is to fund a part-time position that could learn to do this going forward. So we're hoping to hire a Wellfletian to help with this project and then take some active role in it going forward. There are hundreds and hundreds of records, and they only do, I think, 20 or 30 a year.
And when you say "we," you're referring to the Historical Society
Commission.
Commission.
Commission. And there's one more part to this. They want to do another workshop on historical properties. I think some of you attended.
Yeah.
A really good one that they did this past year.
Yeah, we've funded a similar project for the last several years. Any questions? Go ahead.
Justina?
Madam Chair, through you, what exploration has been done for using volunteers for the job?
I can tell you that we asked a similar question each time, which is what led to the idea of hiring someone locally that we could train. Apparently, it's a highly skilled effort, and there is someone that they have used for several years who is a leading expert in the description of these historic and putting down of the necessary information, et cetera. And our hope is that we will train someone to do it in the future.
Can I just say, you used to have an employee who was employed, there was an employee of the Historical Society who, when I was researching the extremely old house I live in, well, not extremely, 1850s, he knew where everything was, and he had every single piece of information. And I hope that you consider him. He's a Wellfleet resident.
That'd be great.
David Wright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, the CPC doesn't administer this program. We only give them money to do it. It would be the Historical Commission that would be doing that program. The next thing is, all of you may be aware, is that at Bakersfield, there is
Tell them about Shellfish is gone.
there is a shade thing that's up in the middle where they have the music and the plays and things like that. We, the town, pay thousands of dollars every year for that temporary thing, so they've come to us and requested a permanent structure. So you can see that that's about $50,000 to put up a permanent structure, but in the long run, will save us money and actually provide us with much better shade and will not have to be put up and taken down each year.
I
So-
hope,
So Recreation wants $36,850 for that?
54,000.
54,000.
They still have.
All right,
this for
sorry.
Shellfish.
So, all right, so, all right,
I understand
okay. Got it.
Oh, I see.
Different things. All right, yeah.
Right, all right, I did skip over the
Skipped over
recreation,
it,
and
yeah.
I'll tell you why, is that the shellfishing folks came to us with an idea to support recreational shellfish use in the town. We were very enthusiastic about funding it. We have subsequently learned that it isn't allowed under CPC
Yeah.
regulations. So we've been working with them to see if there's some other way that we can use the money to support recreational shellfishing, but it has to be a capital improvement for recreation out of the shade cover. And what they were talking about was buying seed and the equipment to do a bed. And we took it to we were in favor of it, but we did ask for clarification from the state, and we were told by the state coalition that it was not, could not be funded using CPC funds.
Okay,
There is a very small amount there's an institute run by the Community Development Partnership in Eastham. It's been ongoing for the last few years for a housing institute. It's open to many people in Wellfleet, and dozens of people have gone through the program. It's well-received, and so we're recommending a grant of $7,500 for them. And the last one is a request to fund the Housing Trust Fund, which is the money that is used for a variety of purposes in town on an as-needed basis for affordable housing.
okay. Any
Any other
questions?
questions, or?
Very good, Kathleen.
Getting back to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, is that also used for the rental assistance?
Strangely enough, we are prohibited from using trust fund money for rental assistance. So we use money that we get from various sources to help fund that, as well as money that we get directly from the town. This year, not related to CPC, but this year we got a grant from the Human Services Committee to help fund extended rental assistance. People have been on for multiple years.
Can it be used for the buy-down?
It can and does
Okay.
support the buy-down.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Motion?
I don't think we
No.
need a motion.
No,
They're
no
just
motion.
presenting it.
Yeah.
It was their hearing.
And now we have the request from Ken Kozak to close the Wicked Oyster. There you are, okay. You want to just come up and say what you're doing?
Good evening. We're just closing to do some renovations and take a break and, the normal winter Wellfleet stuff.
Any questions or comments from the board? Okay. Can I have a motion?
I move to approve the request of Ken Kozak to close the Wicked Oyster from February 19th through April 4th, 2019.
Second?
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Enjoy your time off.
Thank you.
All right, and now we'll go on to budget reviews. We'll start with the library. Okay, welcome.
Good evening. I've submitted my budget for this year, and the main change on it is that I have asked for some extra money for temporary assistance. I have found this year that I have not had enough staff, particularly skilled staff in technology. Our library is the hub of technology in the town, and it's the only place that people are able to come to use the internet, for example. While many people don't have that in their homes, it's the only place people can come to apply for jobs online, to sign up for health care, to do their taxes, etc. And they need a lot of help for that. And I need staff that is qualified to be able to help with that, and who can take the time to help with that, because it's very time consuming. The other issue is that because there is a call for more and more programming, particularly when people are not working, the library has become open more hours than when we are actually open. So for instance, Sundays we were open from 2 to 5, but we are now stretched where we're actually open at like 11 to 6, 7. We have our art receptions on Saturday nights. So the staff that is staying from those hours when we're not open, and we also have Friday night events, are not working during the regular hours. And so we're having a problem with too few staff members during the times when we're open. And it's just not enough. So I'm asking for more temporary staff this year while I try to figure out my staffing problem, because there's a big one. So that's my biggest issue this year.
And when you say temporary staff, like how many hours or how many man-hours, how many people? And if you're hiring someone temporarily who's local, is that just feasible to keep doing that?
We're talking about 10 hours a week, we're talking about $18.50 an hour, and we're talking about a local person, and then it's very feasible. We do have somebody who we contracted with, who worked during a staff absence this summer, and who we've been using to do some drop-in hours. Also, we have people who's sick, the flu, vacation, etc. And I'm pretty sure we would have to post for this job, but there are definitely people with technical skills, but we need younger people. We need people with the abilities. And as technology is changing by the minute, I mean, today's technology is yesterday, is tomorrow, and we need this. So I have asked for that in addition to my temporary budget. My temporary budget is usually $4,000 a year. I changed that to $3,000 this year to at least try to give something back. The other issue is that the town is funding the library, our materials budget, at 85%. And if it dips below 80, we're no longer certified. And so I'm kind of, this year, asking for the temporary staff rather than a higher materials budget, because I'm really, really hoping that the town at some point would fund this library, you know, very well-renowned 5-star library, at 100%, because I think that it deserves that.
I'm scanning my memory bank for when I was a trustee, and that was kind of the, hasn't that been the norm for the past 30, 40 years?
That it hasn't been?
No, it has been the norm.
No, it hasn't been. And the goal has always been to try to get it up there. 85% is very low, though, and it's you know, it's down there with libraries that are not as
Good.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to put it that way, but yes.
Okay, Helen?
So a couple of things. I have a question, but I'm going to say that this department, the library, is one of the things that we get the most bang for our buck from. Okay? And I really appreciate the beautiful budget you presented to us in these documents. However, my question is, how much money comes from the Friends of the Library? How much money did you get, let's say, last year or the year before from the Friends of the Library?
We got probably about $20,000 from the Friends of the Library, and the majority of that goes to children's programming.
Okay.
And because that's not something we ask the town for. So we use it as a supplement for other things that we can bring into the community. They also use it for their programming, like they're having a music series right now, and that costs a decent amount of money.
Okay.
They do supplement our budget because we can't get it from the town. So for instance, last year I ran out of money for ebooks and other electronic resources. And I asked the Friends to supplement that to the tune of about $4,000 or $5,000. So that happened. But the majority of that goes to extra things that we're able to provide the community with, because that's part of what makes the library exciting. Now, in terms of the trustees, they fund a couple of specific things for us. We do have some, excuse me one second. We do have some money that has been earmarked for children's books by one donor, and we use probably about, I don't know, $1,000 for that, for picture books. And a lot of the money from the trustees goes to things like the art reception we have for the Wellfleet Art Show, and currently we are trying to buy new lamps for some of the tables in the library, facilities, things.
Janet, I'm a little confused.
Okay.
Which happens with me. So you get money from, it's all good. You deserve all of it, okay? But I don't care about the minutia of what you spend it on, personally. I don't know about the rest of the board. But, so you get money from the Friends, and you get money from the town, but you get money from the trustees too? Is that a separate unit of?
Donations.
Oh, just donations?
Those are donations to the library from people.
Martin Erber.
No, yeah, no, I know. It wasn't coming across to me in that way. It was like I thought, oh, the trustees make, how did that work? Thank you. I'm fine, I'm done. Maybe they're not.
Yes, Jerry.
And to be honest, the hope is to save that for a bigger project at some point down the road.
I think the Wellfleet Library is one of the best libraries on the Cape, and probably one of the better ones in the United States. Clams is a great success. I use the library a lot. I use your computer. I check out your movies. I read a lot of books, my wife and I. And I can't say enough. The people that work at that library are so nice. They're really, really nice people. And
Thank you.
never a harsh word. Sundays are great for cookies and tea. And I just think it's a wonderful place to go, and I spent some time there. So if there are no other questions, I move to approve the library budget for FY20 presented as amended.
Second.
Okay, no other questions? Okay, all right. All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the nice
I'll wait
things
till
you said
town
about the
meeting, but
library.
yeah. Okay, Council on Aging, budget, where there you are.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before I begin, I would like to point out that the library and the Council on Aging Senior Center have a new collaboration. Our new, funded by town meeting, 7-passenger van is now being used on Saturdays to pick up seniors and take them to the music series at the library. And the Friends of the Library are paying the driver. It's one of our drivers in our van, and all the seniors report that we should do it more often. So,
great.
thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Excuse me. The Council on Aging budget for this year is basically the same, with the one exception that the cost of the Visiting Nurse Association health contract has gone up. They provide to the town a weekly clinic at the senior center where the visiting nurse sees people, does their blood pressure, blood glucose, talks about medications. That same VNA nurse also does home visits to frail housebound elders at the referral of our outreach worker, or sometimes at the request of VNA certified care who are discharging them but think someone should look at them at least once a week to make sure they're okay. So that's 2/3 of it, and the third part of that contract is through the health agent with the infectious disease control and reporting, which is confidential, that I never see, but it comes out of the same contract. And that is an increase of $900. The budget had, their request had not increased for the previous 3 years. So it's not a surprise that we did get an increase this year. And there's some small things, stamps went up. And what else? Let's see. Oh, and because we have a second vehicle, there is a slight increase in the telephone cost, because I'd like to also put a cell phone in the second vehicle, as we have in the first vehicle. And that's about it. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I mean, don't people have their own cell phones? Tell me things I don't know, because I don't know.
Well, people have their own cell phones, but you can't presume that they're going to bring their own cell phones and use them for business purposes while they're driving the van. It's not part of the requirements of being a van driver.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
And Verizon, I think, charges us $12.50 a month for that basic kind of cell phone, so it's a reasonable cost.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Any from the audience? Okay, well, may I have a motion?
I move to approve the Council on Aging budget for fiscal year 20 as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, Human Services?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Keep going, keep going.
Yeah, I know, you can't get rid of me yet. All right, Human Services is 3 basic components. It's the original lump sum that town meeting has voted for a number of years, which is available to agencies that provide direct services to Wellfleet residents. And they have to be 501c3 agencies. And they have to respond to an RFP put out by the Social and Human Services Committee. 4 years ago, the voucher program for 4-year-old preschool students was added to that budget. That is a lump sum of $100,000 a year divided by the number of eligible 4-year-olds living in Wellfleet. And now this year, I've doubled that request to $200,000 because I'd like to add 3-year-olds. And then the last $25,000 is the Navigator program, which is a case management program paid for by the town, managed by the town of Wellfleet. It's case management for people with substance abuse and mental health issues. So the number of people being served by the Navigator is increasing. This is our 2nd year in the program. And there are some bumps, but they're being smoothed out, and I would advocate that we continue to fund that. The 3-year-olds, our request is because from the first year we did 4-year-olds, the parents wanted 3-year-olds added. The second reason is there's a lot of, when we first did this, when Mr. Hauk and Mr. Pilcher were the leading advocates and proponents of doing this, the then Wellfleet Elementary School Committee said they would never have preschool in the building. Well, fast forward 4 years, and now the statewide and national imperative is to have paid public preschool. But while that's being discussed, I do think it would be a huge boon to Wellfleet parents to have 3- and 4-year-old vouchers available. It is less expensive than establishing a classroom. It's more immediate for the parents who need it, And I know it's a large chunk of money to go to town meeting with, but I totally believe it can be justified. And the school committee is now discussing putting 3- and 4-year-olds in the school. It's not going to happen for next year. This could be an interim measure while the elementary school works out their long-term plan and goal for this. So I'm not saying this is going to be ongoing forever and ever, but it would be an interim measure.
What's how many 3-year-olds are there about? Do you actually have that number?
Well,
And 4-year-olds just?
I have the 4-year-old number for the last 4 years, and surprisingly enough, it's gone from 17 to 18 to 19 4-year-olds, which is a lot of 4-year-olds when you consider that some of our classes have 8 or 9 children in them.
Well, they were 3-year-olds at one time, so, yeah.
Well, exactly, that's my point, but I mean, that seems to be consistent across the years, is 17 to 19 children. I had 3 sets of twins in the last 2 years, which bumped up the figures a little bit.
Yeah. Justina?
Madam Chair, through you, without a doubt, retaining young families and supporting work and job situations is important for the town. But do you have any information about how many of those children come from families where they can't afford the childcare themselves?
I don't have any financial figures, but anecdotally, the migration has gone from the less expensive preschools to the more costly preschools over the 4-year period because the parents have the availability of the voucher. So that's not scientific,
Well,
but it's observation.
sure.
And I think it's a definite trend. And it's also available, as I'm sure you're aware, to parents who live in Wellfleet but may work elsewhere and want to take their children to a preschool that's closer to their place of employment. We've had several years where they were in the Provincetown school preschool because their parents worked in Provincetown. Same thing for the Cape Cod Tech Fair Acres Country Day because mom worked in Katuitt. I mean,
Sure.
it's hard to say who can afford it and who can't, but
Yep.
I would say it makes it possible for quality preschool.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
through you to Dan, am I mistaken that Provincetown recently provided some support for daycare, or? Maybe I made
They
that up.
have. At town meeting last April, they provided pretty much universal pre-care or preschool services for all grade level or all ages below kindergarten.
And if I could, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Suzanne.
The Provincetown school system also pays for daycare for infants and toddlers. I'm not recommending that for Wellfleet. It's very generous, but I do think the 3- and 4-year-old piece is.
Yeah. No, it's proven to improve the overall education and sociability and everything, so.
And
it's a
for
good
those of
idea.
us who are cold-blooded about it, $1 spent when the child is 3 saves you spending $10 on that same child when they're 10.
Right.
So it's a cost-effective investment.
Yeah, and can I
And
just
it's a good
say,
investment in our community.
so when I think of affordable housing, I don't just think of that part of people having less money and needing help. I think of this part too, you know, because one's budget is a solid thing. And the other thing is, what I love is a lot of those kids could be here, and Ms. Grout Thomas and I were in kindergarten together here.
Private kindergarten, because they didn't even have that in those
Because they
days.
didn't have anything before first grade. And I have to say that people being able to be together in some kind of preschool school, it's not a frill. It really makes a foundation for the community. And my God, I am delighted to hear that we have that many children here.
It's
considering.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Make a
Okay.
motion?
Yes, you may.
I move to approve the Human Services Grants budget for fiscal year '20 as presented.
Second?
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
And now moving on to the Marina Enterprise budget. Any harbor master people here?
I
Nope. Do you wanna
don't
just
see
do it?
them.
I don't either, yeah.
They are presenting also to the Finance Committee tomorrow night, and they may have gotten confused with their
Okay.
times. So I will have them come forward to you on your next meeting on February 12th.
Okay. All right, licenses. Common victualer's license, what?
Madam Chair, I can't and don't want to, which is two different separate things, vote on Moby Dick. So whenever we do any of this moving here, can you separate that out? Just do Moby Dick first, and then I can join in on the rest of them, okay? I'm in a
Okay.
butter, okay?
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to list all the names of the common victual licenses up for renewal. I will exclude Moby Dick's, and we will vote on the other ones. What?
The Wagner. I'm an employee.
Oh, and you're going to recuse yourself from that. Okay, so I will exclude both of those, and we'll vote on the others as a group, and then we can take each one individually. Before we vote, is there anybody on the board or in the audience that has a comment or anything on any of these restaurants in town? Any reason why they shouldn't get their license renewed? No, okay, good. So the following list, I'll look for a move to approve the renewal of the common victualer license for Bocce Italian Grill, Box Lunch, Blackfish Variety, Boathouse Fish Market, bookstore and restaurant, Catch of the Day, Ciraldi's, Chiquesset Yacht and Country Club, Seashore, Cumberland Farms, Emac and Bolio's, Eventide Motel and Cottages, Flying Fish Cafe, the Fox and Crow Cafe, Harbor Stage Company, Hatch's Fish Market, JB's Pizza Bar and Grill, Max Seafood Takeout, Max Seafood Market, Mac Shack, Mainstay Motor Inn, Maurice's Campground, PB Boulangerie Bistro, Pearl Restaurant, PJ's Family Restaurant, Seaberry Surf Gift Shop, Solace Food Truck, Vin Rensselaers, Wellfleet Beachcomber, Wellfleet Cinemas, Wellfleet Donuts, Wellfleet Drive-In and Flea Market, Wellfleet Marketplace, Wellfleet Miniature Golf, Dairy Bar and Grill, Wellfleet Motel and Lodge, Wellfleet Preservation Hall, The Wicked Oyster, and Winslow's Tavern. Any comments? Okay. May I have a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor? Great, thank you. So now we will move Moby Dick's approval for renewal of a common victualer's license without Helen Miranda Wilson voting. She will be abstaining.
No, I will be recusing.
Oh, that's right, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Right.
Okay. So may I have a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor? And then secondly, we will now hear the Wagner at Duck Creek. I move to approve the renewal of the common victual license for that with Kathleen Bacon recusing.
I move to approve the renewal for the Wagner of the common victualer's license
Right,
for
you
the
just have to
Wagner at Duck
second it.
Creek.
Second, all in favor? Okay, thank you. And now we have the approval for the weekly entertainment licenses, so I'm going to assume it's the same as the Wagner. And any on this list, Helen, that you can't vote on?
No, I can vote on all of them.
Okay, so why don't you read, or somebody else read the move to approve?
I'll do it. I move to approve the renewal and by the way, I'm going to add something to this because one of the people apparently who should have gotten it last year didn't get it. Remember, every time somebody applies for an entertainment thing, they get given a copy of, or in some way conveyed electronically or otherwise, a copy of our noise bylaw. So I'm going to move to approve the renewal of weekly entertainment licenses and to have provided to each licensee a copy of our noise bylaw parenthesis, Wellfleet General Bylaws, Article 7, Section 26. Bocce Italian Grill, Bookstore and Restaurant, Seashore, Flying Fish Cafe, Harbor Stage Company, PB Boulangerie Bistro, Pearl Restaurant, Van Rensselaers. Oh, wait a minute, Kathleen didn't recuse, did
Yes.
she? You
Yes, she did.
Okay, sorry. The Wagner at Duck Creek, Wellfleet Beachcomber, Wellfleet Cinemas, Wellfleet Drive-In Flea Market, Wellfleet Miniature Golf, Dairy Bar and Grill, Wellfleet Preservation Hall, The Wicked Oyster, and Winslow's Tavern.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, and now we'll take the approval for the renewal of the Wagner at Duck Creek.
No, she counted it in.
Because,
Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
because you were out. All right,
you were out.
I've got it circled. Okay, very good.
I guess food truck is being
That's it.
postponed.
And the food truck is being postponed.
yeah,
So moving on to Slaibi Enterprises, there,
Salibi?
isn't it?
Mobile.
Yeah.
Wellfleet Mobile.
Yeah.
Salibi.
Slaibi, I don't know. Okay,
that's what they call
That's
themselves.
how they say it.
say it again?
Salibi.
Salibe?
It's Lebanese.
Yeah,
This is mobile, the mobile station.
okay, so,
It's the mobile station, everybody.
so can I have approval to renew that license? The motion?
I move that we approve the license, the renewal of Class 2 license for Salabibi
Salibi.
Enterprises.
Second.
All in favor? Scrolling down here. Okay, and now automatic amusement, South Fleet Motor Inn. May I have a motion?
I move to approve the renewal of the automatic amusement license for South Wellfleet Motor Inn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. All right. Well, we're moving right along for a long agenda. All right, so now we're up to appointments and reappointments, and we now have Peg Cardiff up again for appointment to the Council on Aging Board. Do you want to come and introduce yourself, please?
My name is Peg Carnduff, and I'm applying for the position on the Council of Aging Board.
So do you want, so Peg explained to me earlier that last week there was only last meeting, there was only one position open, and now another position has opened up, so she is applying for that position.
Correct.
Okay. So, any questions or comments for Peg? All right, may I have a motion to appoint?
I move to appoint Peg Carduff to the Council on Aging Board for a term to expire on June 30th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice and easy. All right, and now we have Christopher Algier. Allgaier, oh my goodness.
As he comes up, I
Never
would
would
just
have
like
guessed
to
that,
say,
yeah.
Chris came to the coffee that I had at the library
Geyer.
and expressed his interests, and he's going to be retiring to Wellfleet. So we grabbed a hold of him right away and got him an application, so we're glad to see him in front of us already.
So my name is Chris Allgaier. I'd love to serve on the dredging committee. My history with Wellfleet goes back quite far in time. My great-grandmother was from Wellfleet. My grandfather spent, as were her ancestors. My grandfather spent summers here. My mother spent summers here. She spent many of those summers in the family home on Money Hill Road, up until the point where they sold the home
To my father.
to Edmund Wilson.
Yeah, so I'm looking at
Wow.
you.
The warranty is up.
That's old.
There is no existing warranty on that
No,
sale.
Janet, through you, may we speak?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Later.
Yes.
I have your number.
Okay. I myself first came to Wellfleet in the early 50s. Don't do the math, it's not necessary. And for background education, I have an engineering degree in civil engineering and a master's degree in construction management. I've spent the last 46 years on engineering and construction projects. And early in my career, I had a little bit of dredging experience, so I would like to help in whatever way I can.
Great, thank you. May I have a motion or any questions or comments?
Yeah, just something, I say this fairly standardly. Even though it's just a task force, you'll be operating under the open meeting law and the conflict of interest law, and the town clerk can tell you everything you need to know about that.
Okay,
And you can't act until you go in and get sworn in once you're appointed.
understood.
Thank you.
May I have a motion?
I move to appoint Christopher Alguier to the Dredging Committee Task Force with a term to be determined.
Yes, it will be determined.
No, we
All
have a
right.
charge.
We haven't
Oh, no,
charged.
wait,
we were
are
thinking
you
of
the first?
3-year.
Oh, yes, no.
He
I-
is the first.
Hold on, you're the first for a 3-year term, because then the next
Okay.
ones we have to do overlapping.
Okay,
All
may I
right,
do
so
that over
for
again? I move to appoint Christopher Alguier to the Dredging Committee Task Force with a term for 3 years.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris.
Later. This was the Freeman family that he comes from, that built the house I live in. Too much information.
No, I was going to ask afterwards.
Lydia Freeman?
What?
Lydia Freeman?
No.
What Freeman?
Richard Rich Freeman. Clara Higgins.
Okay,
Elizabeth.
moving on. Use of town property, oh, there is none. Okay, business, to discuss the process for police chief replacement. Chief Facette, you want to come to the table?
As the chief comes up to the table for discussing this, we're not talking about a specific candidate in here. If you want to do that where you want to interview a candidate that has been mentioned in here, we can add that to a future agenda, and that candidate has the right to be present. Basically, what you're deciding now, the chief has identified somebody that would be a successor candidate for this position, and if you wanted to follow his recommendation, you could make a motion to do that, and then we would have the process play out. If you did not want to do that and wanted to either interview a person, or you wanted to do a regional or nationwide search for a new police chief, then at a later time you could also make that decision.
Oh, wow.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Kathleen?
I think I understand you clearly, Dan. Looking at a memo from you, Chief, dated December 6, 2018, with your intent to retire for fiscal year 2020. I think you've given us an outline to follow, and I'm inclined to follow it.
I thank you. We hire people regularly with officers. We do promotions regularly. Filling the chief of police position is something we don't do regularly. I've held a spot for almost 10 years. It is up to you. It's your appointment, as I identified through the charter, through state law. And it's just whatever you wish to do. If we follow what I outlined, I can start looking to replace a person, because if I leave, then a person succeeds me. It creates an opening at the bottom end of the department. As I mentioned to you, that takes time. I had a person leave in July. You guys appointed that person October, November, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. That person's not going into an academy until April. So if we look to go this route, it gives me a chance, work with the lieutenant, to start backfilling this, so by the time I'm leaving, we're hopefully going to be back at full staffing with the trained and appropriate people. So that's why I'm doing it early, and that's why I presented it so early.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah. So before you was Chief Rosenthal, and he came from away.
Correct.
And from everything I knew at the time, he helped the department, not to go into too much detail, get to a better place. And you were one of the results of that. In other words, you came up under Chief Rosenthal. Were you hired during the time he was with us?
I was actually before Chief Rosenthal. I was a
Right,
young
that's
officer when I came on board.
That's what I was trying to think. So there are benefits from going through the whole process of the sending it out nationwide, pre-screening committee, select board makes a selection. And I just wanted to put that out there as opposed to, having somebody come up from within, which has enormous benefits if it's the right person. So I'm thinking out loud right here, and I'm wondering what would be in the best interest of the department.
Yep, Jerry?
Well, I think the chief has given us a good outline. And if I were still going to be on the board, which I will not be, the person that you have mentioned in there would have my full support. Known him for a long time. I think he's done an outstanding job, knows the community, knows the people, and I think that's very beneficial. So I'm just putting that out there also, because I think the person deserves a shot at your position.
Any other comments? I would also say that hiring from within, we just know with past experience that it's just, the community feels way more comfortable about knowing who's next. And he already knows the community, or she already knows the community. And I trust your judgment. Any other comments? Comments from the community? Yes. You have to get up to the microphone and speak and state your name, please.
Richard Blakely, South Wellfleet. Chief, I can't believe you're retiring. But Chief was a successor candidate.
Yes.
He came from within, and it pleases me to no end to think that that's the first place we're going to look for his successor. So I just can't, I'm shocked, Chief, that you're retired.
I know.
Thank you.
Still looks like a young boy, doesn't he? Thank you. Thank you for those comments. Anyone else? All right, hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move to adopt a hiring process for the new police chief as outlined by Chief Hassett.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the careful lead-in to this. It's very considerate, for yourself as well, but...
We're trying to look out for the town, the department, and everybody, so
Yeah.
we're trying to have a nice, smooth transition.
We
So,
like
thank
smooth
you.
transitions. Okay, approval of Eversource Energy. So Dan, disregard that email if you got it.
Yes.
It's a totally wrong
Okay.
thing when I talked to the person. Is Justin here to speak on this? Does anybody want to speak on this? Do we need to speak on it?
I just have a question.
Okay.
Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Hort, are the electrical charging stations already in place behind Town Hall?
They are installed. They
there's no
won't be,
cable?
they won't be hooked up until this cable is brought to that area.
And is this cable coming from Main Street
That is correct.
to the back?
Yes.
And I brought this up as an individual. The board didn't vote it and didn't deliver it to you as consensus. But for a number of reasons, I think it would be very good to get the baseline reading for low-frequency magnetic radiation before the transformer is hooked up.
We will do that.
Yeah, it's just you do a little research, get a good firm to do it, and have it done. Don't just use some private person with their own equipment, because the equipment has to be kept, in shape. Please.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from the audience, from the board? May I have some motions?
I move to allow Eversource Energy to install 266 feet of underground conduit at 300 Main Street.
Second?
All in favor? And second motion?
I move to allow Eversource Energy to have an easement at 300 Main Street.
Second?
Why can't we just take the whole thing?
Because we're already in the middle. I was going to, but nobody else did. Okay, second that. I'll second it. All in favor? And the third one?
I move to allow Eversource Energy to install a cable and conduit at 720 and 760 Chequesset Neck Road.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? So if you want the motion made all at once, make the motion.
I thought you said we had to do it that way.
No, I just said motions. I just said make the
I
motions.
misheard them.
Yes.
Getting older, you know, the.
Yeah, I know, Jerry. Okay, so disposition of town-owned property. Are we still doing this tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question for the board. Did we all get to take a look at it?
No, that's why I was sick.
I did.
I was out of town and then got sick, so I didn't look at it again. So
Um,
I wouldn't
I
mind.
did.
Yeah, and Justina?
No.
Okay, so 2 of us have and 3 of us, no, 3 of us have. I did it just before the meeting.
Did Jerry
and
do
2
it?
of us, yes, he was the one
Okay.
that brought it up.
Okay.
I have to say something. I get Jerry's point. However, I also was at the Conscom meeting for another reason where they discussed this, and they recommended it. And I'd like to remind everybody that when we got these 2 lots last time at the last meeting, on the back was the fact that the health conservation agent had signed off on them, right? In other words, had signed off on that one that, as Jerry described it, was wet when you went to it. And I see why. It's right down on marsh level. However, I think that whatever the housing authority decides to do with this, it could be one house using the acreage of both lots, even though there's a paper road that's actually a
that-
dirt road there. But here's
No,
the
that
point.
wouldn't work.
All we're doing tonight is just sending it on to boards and
Right.
committees. So I think, in my opinion, having looked at it, we could do that.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
for you. Helen, I just have a problem that it's wetlands, and I have a problem if alternative septics are involved. It's not common sense.
It's not wetland. The lower lot is not wetland. It abuts wetland.
It's
That's
like
what-
I said, it doesn't make common sense. I have property that abuts wetland, and you just have to be so careful. It's like, I don't think it's common sense.
It may not be used in a way that pollutes the wetland, but in any case, that will be determined when these different boards and committees look at it. And like the Board of Health could get it and say, no way, okay?
Madam Chair, through you, I just thought Michael Perlanti gave us the history of it, and it's just, we work so hard to be mindful of conservation and wetlands, and just, there's other lots we can give to housing, but I don't think because it's housing, we should sort of change how we think about wetlands and alternative septics and all that. Like, I'm only one person, that's my position, it's not common sense.
Through you to Justina, I have to say that usually I'm saying what you're saying, so I agree with you. However, the upland lot is safely away from that. It's an undersized lot, unfortunately.
Didn't
but-
you say it abuts wetland?
No.
No.
No,
The
we have
one
up on the
that's, there are
desert.
2 lots on the map, right?
Yeah.
The one that's next to Chequesset Neck Road is, a few beats above the marsh there. The other one is up a
hill.
slant. It's really upland, okay? It's well removed. Even if we had that whole area flooded, it would not be touched. That's why we needed to do the site visit. So I would be perfectly happy to meet you halfway in your concerns, some of which I share. and
Okay.
to say, why don't we send along Lot 112 on map 14? And, not the other one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, too.
It's a compromise.
And I would just add that 8 or so years ago, when I was on the planning board, we also didn't feel comfortable with the front lot being available. So may I have a motion?
I move to refer the possible disposition of town-owned property as shown on the Assessor's Map 14, parcels 112, to all committees, boards, departments, and other potentially interested parties.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. So, okay, considering waiving the building permit fees for Habitat for Humanity project at 2082 Route 6?
Yes.
Do you want to introduce yourselves, please? Yeah, and put the microphone maybe in between you.
Absolutely. My name's Elizabeth Wade, and I'm the new lands acquisition and permitting manager at Habitat for Humanity. So I'm here tonight to request fee waivers. Normally, when Habitat undertakes a project through Chapter 40B, the waiver application is included. For 2082 Route 6, which will be known as Durkee Lane, normally that waiver would be included in the LAU application. Because I was new, it was my oversight and was not included in that application which you signed on August 14th, 2018. So I'm here tonight with Justin graciously here to request that at this time.
Any questions?
No.
Comments?
Do it.
It's a good
cause.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
I
Can I have a
move to
motion?
waive the building permit fees for the Habitat for Humanity project at 2082 Route 6.
Second?
I haven't been asking if there's any comments from the audience this whole time. What?
I'm sorry.
No, I rushed it along. Any comments from the audience? Oh, sorry. Don't worry about it. It's going to be referred anyhow. It's going to come back. Okay, hearing none. May I have a vote? We made a motion, right? Yes, we did. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Sharon, it'll go to the other boards and come back to us.
Okay.
Well, we'll see what the other boards say. Oh, yeah, we're not referring it. Yeah, okay, next year. We'll look more into it. All right, so you guys must all be here for the Massachusetts Shellfish Initiative? Yes? Thank you for waiting,
town
although it's only
administrator?
7:15. No, we're having a discussion of the Massachusetts Shellfish Initiative, which Helen wanted to have, so she will, and Nancy's here too, to just explain things to the people who have been here.
Well, briefly, and this was said before some of the people came in. Last week, there was a very concentrated 3-hour meeting, Shellfish Advisory Committee meeting, and can we either close the door or ask those people to be quiet, please?
Housing people are so noisy.
They are, they're so happy. Okay, I apologize to people. This was put on this agenda because I just wanted to give a quick update to my fellow board members, okay? This is an important issue. It's unfolding. I have been researching it and learning more about it all this week. And the thing I announced at the beginning of the meeting, and I said I was going to announce it again, is 7 o'clock, February 25th, the consultant who works for this group called the Massachusetts Shellfish Initiative is going to be here at the COA and give us more information about it, which we will have otherwise before that. I wanted the other board members to understand that this is an unfolding situation, and that is the main reason it's on here. Discussion is wrong. It's just a mini report tonight.
So
okay?
why don't you give a mini report?
So the mini report is
And Nancy can
this.
help fill in.
In 2014, the state jump-started basically a stakeholder group to help get input from the shellfish community at large to the state, to the DMF, and to the other agencies, you know, related to things like Vibrio and so forth. It's a good thing. And stakeholder groups organized, we have one for the Herring River project, for example. It's a normal good thing. All the people, by definition, have conflict of interest because they're experts. And it's kind of a think tank, fact-finding report from the people who are most affected by whatever the issue is, okay? And the state would go and brief them, and it went on for a while, and then it dwindled. It has not been decommissioned. That group, which is called the Shellfishing Advisory Panel, still exists, but it hasn't met for a while. But it hasn't been decommissioned. Meanwhile, this other group, whose nucleus was 3 private organizations, which is not bad because some of them were on the Shellfish Advisory Panel, organized by the state, has gotten together and created this new group, which is just fledgling and has been working out, I think, some organizational issues, and has had one meeting. The other thing I wanted to report to you is what came clear to me at the Shellfish Advisory Committee meeting was there's a whole lot of information about it that people don't have. It's not all a bad thing, it's not all a good thing, and it doesn't maybe entirely know what it is. And 3 people from Wellfleet, one of whom is our shellfish constable, and we heard about that at the last meeting. She gave a good little succinct description of what this group was at the beginning during announcements. And 2 other people are going to be part of one of the subcommittees that this group has formed to do basically another version of what the group formed by the state did starting in 2014. So that's where we are now. I'm just giving you a quick update, and the pros and cons of it can be discussed at the February 25th meeting, when we will know more and we will be told more, and we should ask lots of tough questions. And I already have some. So that's where we are now, and our board is the Shellfish Regulatory Board, and the Shellfish Department may know way, way more about what's going on, but we need to at least have some sense of it. So I'm sorry if you guys all came out and thought it was going to be more substantive than that.
So what are they going to be discussing or researching, or what are they going to be working on?
Well, the
And
consultant...
Nancy, if you want to join in, you can too.
The consultant, I'll talk as she walks up, but I had a 45-minute or maybe an hour conversation with Michael Hickey yesterday, who told me a great deal about all of it. I didn't represent myself as a delegate. So the point is, it's what I described the other group doing before. They're advocates, they're brainstorming, there are stakeholders, and it's an auxiliary to whatever the state wants to do, but it's not something that is an official state body yet. So, anything to add?
That's true. It's not an official state body yet, but they are now working closely with the state, which is what the task force is. So the task force has set up its first subcommittee, which is the assessments committee, which I'm on, and a bunch of other shellfish constables and industry stakeholders are on. They are supposed to be getting kind of a lay of the land, so collecting information, compiling information from their constituents about what's going on in the shellfish industry today. Are there needs out there that we should be addressing? Is everything going fine? Just really looking at the lay of the land, from municipal propagation to restoration projects to aquaculture, wild fisheries, and reporting that kind of assessment of what exists and what needs there might be back to the task force by April 3rd. So it's kind of a boots on the ground, collecting information. I think one thing I will say is everybody's interest in this is really encouraging, because the way that you take care of your business and your operations and our town is by participation. So I think it's great that there's so many people involved, and that will continue to be involved. And I think that we don't have a lot of information yet. And to me, what happened at the task force meeting is MSI steering committee, so the 3 NGOs that got together to start this, they were kind of told, we're going to put the brake on this for a minute. And as the state, we're going to go back and try and get some information ourselves. So I feel like we're getting in on the ground floor, even though there has been some work done to date. There were some surveys taken. There was a report that was published. But it's very clear that the task force already said, like, thank you for that information. We want to do this on our own. So there is this interest in starting from scratch and getting stakeholders to report back and gather the information. Who knows? Maybe the information will be, things are going pretty well and we don't need MSI here. It could be. One thing that's different, and I haven't figured out all the details yet, but one thing is that Massachusetts is quite unique in that we have home rule. So each town regulates its own shellfishing industry. Yeah. And what happens in this town, whether it be what the wastewater committee wants to do with restoration, that's going to go with my participation. And so the towns really are in charge. And there's no way we're going to, us constables or towns, I think, are going to let that change. I think it would be really, really tall order. I don't believe it's even on the docket.
We don't know how this is going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
And we also, I know from Sarah Peak, who called me before the Shellfish Committee meeting last week, she made it very clear that as now Nancy and I both said, this is not a state organization. This is just a very, very focused, not very well organized, according to almost every person I've spoken with, group. But they have a lot of drive. And if they have an agenda or not, we can find out more at the February 25th meeting. But I'm open-minded about it. And on the other hand, what I most want to know is, have they been giving support to some things which are purely industry-driven, as opposed to what I always say, you know who the biggest stakeholder is? Mother Nature, the environment. That is the biggest stakeholder. And what she tells people who fish to do, they have to listen. And you do. If you want it to go well on your grant, you listen to her. Because she is the biggest stakeholder. And if she gets wrecked, you're wrecked. And sometimes you're wrecked anyway because of the weather, right? But I really hope that this group understands that she's in the room even if she isn't talking. And I'm sorry, I'm an all-time feminist. You know, I call her she. She's probably gender fluid.
Everybody is today, okay?
Okay,
We all are.
Yes, Kathleen.
Nancy, ultimately, this sounds to me like it's a loosely strung ad hoc group that's not been mandated by the state to gather this information. But if you could, and I realize you may not be able to answer this question, ultimately, when this information gathering has concluded, what do you think the determinations are going to be made here? I mean, ultimately, what are they looking to, just to say that, oh, you're doing okay, Wellfleet, or there's just something mistrustful to me in this?
I think there's been a lot of mistrust being talked about, and so I think people don't trust this process. I don't have a reason to not trust it. They haven't proven to
Yeah, I
me
get that.
anything.
Yeah.
But I don't see what's wrong with kind of looking at what they're going to look at and being a part of the dialogue. I don't know what they're going to come out. Like I said, like Massachusetts is different, and trying to get however many coastal towns we have to agree on something might be hard. It might be more difficult in Massachusetts than in other states, which let the states manage their fisheries. So I don't know what to expect. All I know is I want to be a part of the discussion, and I want our views represented, and I want to hear what my constituents that I serve, what they say, what they want to be a message. I'm willing to take that message, but I'm also going to be collecting information and bringing it back here and to the stakeholders, because we don't know a lot yet, but I don't want to be left out of the discussion either.
I
want a
agree.
seat at the table.
You know, I learned something at the last dredging task force meeting that I hadn't even thought about before. And it goes to expanding our oyster industry here in Wellfleet. That for all those wrecks and all that gear that's out in the harbor, that slows down that ebb tide on the way out, leaving us more black mayonnaise on the way in. So we have to think about these things environmentally here, how we build our industry, how we place it with regard to the harbor. Alfred Picard brought that up at the last dredging meeting, and I had never thought of it.
I think I'd like to see a scientific study that proves that. Not that I'm not, I get it. I get it. There is a lot. But it's one thing to say, I notice, and then, because it's just such a complex topic. But Mother Nature is in charge. Helen's right, and I think we all learned that again this week.
Madam Chair, through you.
Yes, Justina.
Kathleen, that's a speculation. I mean, I just want to qualify that maybe that's right and maybe that's wrong.
Janet?
Yes.
Yeah, so, longtime member of the Shellfish Committee, and there's a member of the Shellfish Committee here, and this is exactly the kind of thing that the Shellfish Committee can have as an agenda item and drill down on and do research and delegate your members to do research on, pull science, share it in the meeting, and talk about it. Exactly the issue of what relation does the deposit of sediment in this kind of situation have to things that are in the water column. And to also work with somebody who's on Conscom about it, because they're all about that too. In other words, this is exactly the kind of thing the Shellfish Committee is actually good at historically. And it's also a venue for the other people who fish to sit there and listen and contribute. And Barbara Benesil, who's now on Conscom, who was on Shellfish Committee, has the scientific subscriptions to pull papers on it like that. We can go home and Google about it a bit, but she can pull the big studies on it. And she did it again and again when she and I worked together on that committee. And that's what we can do. We don't have to wait. Great Alfred Picard brought it up. Let's find out.
I wonder if boats also, I mean.
Well, there's a lot of things that contribute to it.
all those
You know,
boats.
it's not just that simple, but
Yeah.
that's another discussion.
So
I want to open it up to the audience. Do you guys have any questions, concerns? You want to go to the mic again, please? Okay.
My name's Richard Blakely. I'm from South Wellfleet. I don't want any board member to think, not for 1 second, that one of these companies has not got their act together. They know what they're going to do. They know what's going to be done. And it's been planned out in advance. And I would hate to see any private operation wiggle its way into Wellfleet. You know, I'm standing here. There was somebody standing here before me, and they gave me this spot. And when it's my time to go, one of these young men is going to come over and he's going to stand in this spot. Wellfleet's been doing it right for almost 200 years. Don't take the pride of being a Wellfleet oysterman away from us. Because, you know, I fear we're at a crossroads now. And I say we stay the course, we do what we've always done, we take care of each other, and we don't listen to these people from outside. Thank you.
Nancy, do you want to address that? Or can you? Or assure him?
So I agree that I don't want things here to change. I think if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I understand that home rule is important, and I think that there's a lot that has not been organized yet about this group. I don't know what to expect, and I'm not sure that we need it either. I don't know. I have a lot of questions. I have pages of questions to ask myself. And I'm going to go in with an open mind, but I'm going to go in also on defense, proactively, because I'm going to protect what we have here. That's my job. And I'm going to see if there's opportunity for the town that everybody can agree on. So it's like this, it is an organization that's trying to, it seems like trying to make sure that when there's all of a sudden these competing interests for bottom, wild fisheries, aquaculture, restoration projects, it's not really necessarily in our town, but other places are really dealing with competing interests. And so these entities thought, let's bring people to the table and talk about it. And I think that's important to create dialogue. I also think it's important to know the lay of the land. So I am listening to all of you and making sure that I will be representing your interests there and defending them.
Yeah, I think the board would be too.
Thank
So
you.
let me just clarify that these interests who have started this, what would be the designation? Because in one sense, they're commercial shell fishermen, but then so are you guys. So what would be the two different terminologies? Is it like corporate shell fishing?
No.
Or what would be the terminology?
Well, it's the MAA, the Nature Conservancy, who's interested in
Wait, what's the MAA?
the Massachusetts Aquaculture
Okay,
Association,
yeah.
right? And the yes, the Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance, and the Nature Conservancy, who's more interested in something which is a benefit to the town, which is already going on, which is the idea of using oyster reefs and oysters to help in some way mitigate water pollution, right? That's why they're in there. And they originally, those three organizations, applied to NOAA for a grant, and they got it. My main question is, why are they doing this and not simply the previous organization, which was doing a very good job, you know, talking about fishermen's issues, you know, shellfishing issues, and bringing up industry questions and bringing up, you know, just everything about it. It was sort of, it jump-started, Vibrio kind of kick-started that, right? In other words, there were all these issues, and the DMF, like, needed to hear more from the constituents, right? That's good. Why are we now dealing with this organization? I don't know. But some of the things that have come forward that people, there's a lot of, let's say, gossip about that we need to pin down is how much are they in support, this Massachusetts Shellfish Initiative? How much are they supporting the idea of privatizing? how much are they supporting the idea of, well, what I said, not paying attention to the major stakeholder in the situation, Mother Nature? We need to ask them clearly and non-adversarially, right? But the main thing about the agenda item tonight is just to make sure this board was getting up a little bit to speed, because very often one of us will hear about something like the dredging or the housing or whatever, and then the rest are blindsided. That's the only reason I had it on tonight. February 25th is the night to show up.
So what did you want to ask or say?
Oh, no,
We
want
want
to
to hear from you.
Come on.
Dan Morton, South Wellfleet. So, a big part of my understanding about this whole MSI thing is they've gotten a lot of their grant funding from corporations that have funded the Cape Cod Fishermen's Alliance to do all these studies that they're going to bring back and make possible recommendations for changes in legislature. That's like a big thing they've been saying. And that's what we're really scared about.
Mm-hmm.
And that they get their money from, long down the line, Walmart. So that's like, that's what I'm scared about.
Justina? Could be,
Foundation, places like that.
Well, Janet Reinhardt, our chair, and I were in Boston last week, and I had just been, the MSI come to my attention. I can't pretend to, I read some of the documents. I can't pretend to know as much as Helen. But I did have opportunity to speak to Ron Bergstrom, our county commissioner, to Sarah Peak, who I guess Helen just more recently spoke to, and Julian Sear, and just say that our shellfish community is concerned, and therefore I'm concerned. And there is some information that I'm incomplete on about a rumor of a bill in front of the legislature to privatize grants. I haven't read it, so I can't credibly say that that's what it is. I can say that people are nervous about it, and Julian Sear said he'd get us a copy of the bill. So I think that the privatization concern, if it's what this young man said is in the legislature, we're going to take it seriously. And you always have to be concerned in America about where funding for what is coming from, because corporations do have money. And I think home rule is important. I'm scrambling to get up to speed on this and defer to Helen, but I think everybody here tonight takes our shellfish community and the 200-year tradition Richard talked about real seriously. And I can tell you, Sarah Peak, Julian Sear were very concerned, and Ron, and I think they said good things.
Janet,
so I just want to say, Nancy, you're aware of this then? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Janet, one more thing. So Nancy mentioned the 50-page report, which I have and which I'm going to send to Nancy. In other words, this group did a survey. It's on their website. It's a bit vapid.
Only 387 people from the whole state.
Okay, no, right.
Only
now,
10 wild fishermen.
Now, I'm the person, Mr. Morton, guess what? I'm the person who, when the result of a survey says 75% said blah, I'm like, and 75% means what? 3 people out of 4?
7 people from
No,
Wellfleet.
no, but do you see what I'm saying?
No.
So the thing that's very clear to me is I need to know more about this organization. I would like to ask the board if I can send you guys a bunch of information that I have. And by the way, in the audience, one of the people who's going to the assessment committee, Sarah Peak got her name in, Jenny Parker, needs to be thanked because of the stuff she started sending this board, we got the red flag. I had known about the previous group since it started, but I didn't know about this group. So anyway, I'd like to just finish here because the 25th is the big day, but may I send you guys all this information, and you can do with it what you want, okay? But
Yeah.
I've started a special.
Thanks, yeah.
Can I say one more thing real quick?
Yes.
I read the minutes from their meeting on whenever it was, their first
January
meeting.
2nd.
Secretary Beaton, he asked everyone at the meeting what changes in legislature would make it easier for them to do what they're trying to do. So he's like,
So we can, go ahead, yep.
Hey, I'm Dave Seitler. So I've done like insane amounts of research on this. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Speak into the mic, please.
Yeah, I've done insane amounts of research on this, and you know, so what I've gathered so far from this is that this is like, so it's a group of people and NGOs and the state, you know, all to get together, and I'm not going to try to like discuss this whole thing, but you know, I kind of lost my train of thought. They're not well organized at all. Like, this has been going on for a while. Like, this whole group has been around for a while. They haven't done much of anything, but now they have, and there's a lot of conflict of interest, which I've noticed. And like we've talked about, that will happen when professionals get together and try to do something. I understand that. But everything's a little too close. Also, like, you know, for this group of people to not reach out to every single person in the state in like an efficient way, and, you know, to not have like really great data from like everybody is, to me, like I've said this before, like totally unacceptable for Wellfleet. Like, Wellfleet is the third largest producer of oysters, you know, and like our history proves that like we already know what we're doing, you know. I think this group was good intentioned, and like if it was like, you know, organic and like actually worked, and they had done like reached out to towns and people correctly and like in an efficient way, I would be all for it. But like the way that this has happened, and the way that it's already mismanaged, and the way that fisheries are mismanaged, this is exactly what causes like reactionary, like step-by-step reactionary things to happen. Just like how we had to put Ginny on this board immediately, you know, which I just found out tonight, that wasn't even true. We didn't have to do that. You know, yes, found that out tonight. So like,
Can you please substantiate that a little bit? That's interesting.
I talked to Scott Soares tonight as I was coming here, and I was like, I said exactly what we had said to you, and that we all rushed to get this in by a Friday due date.
Which we were told we had to do.
That is not
And
accurate.
that Sarah Peak had to do it for us.
Not accurate.
Okay, so. No, Ginny, you have to, if you want to.
And this speaks.
Who are you, please?
Ginny Parker. I think this speaks to a lot of the disorganization and the lack of communication, because that information came from an email from Scott Soares. So I can forward that to you, and it was written on the 23rd with the due date back of the 25th, and Nancy read it that night. So this is the type of, when Nancy spoke earlier to a feeling of mistrust happening, I mean, it's been that way. I think you all know that the only reason this came to my attention is because a selectman in another town called me and said, why isn't Wellfleet represented on this task force? So that's what started this. And you know the attempts I made to bring it forward through the proper channels, through the, you know, Mr. Seitler, to this, via the Shellfish Constable, and still we got nowhere with this. It took me multiple letters, phone calls, promises that Sarah Peak was going to be contacted. I don't get any feedback, feel I'm being ignored. Finally, it took me calling Sarah Peak myself. You know, Sarah Peak was not at the meeting, our task force meeting on the 2nd of January. She told me that she purposely, she's like, and the gentleman that covers Plymouth, I don't know his name, D'Amico, the other representative,
Yeah.
she said, there's no way we could have been there that day, Ginny, because the State House is so busy. And since then, I've told them, I can't meet on Wednesdays or Thursdays. Well, the April 3rd due date that everybody's rushing for, that's also a Wednesday, too. So the reason it feels dishonest and icky is because it is. And I can cite multiple accurate examples.
I do hope that if you're representing the town, that this is just me talking, that you don't accuse people of being dishonest, because lack of organization is not always
I won't,
dishonesty,
Helen.
even if it
Yeah.
is.
You know what, my professional background, will be good. But I have to make it really clear here, because I don't want it to seem as if that when someone alludes to that, there's been this, that there has been gossip or anything like that. Like, these are hard facts, and I've supplied you the documents, and I can continue to do that. But you pretty much have, so I'll leave it at that, but I think we need to be really clear that when you tell someone you're going to reach out to Sarah Peak, get back to me, right? And when I've told, and that the issues that we have experienced and the buzz that's been created is because nobody listened in the beginning. And this is, as you can see, this is a very critical task force. You know, when we hear from Chatham, who knows the Cape Cod Hook Fishermen's Association or the Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Association, they've known them because that organization started in their town. So I'll leave it at that, but I think there was the alarm that the state of alarm that it may feel like it got to is because I felt like we were ringing the bell and nobody was paying attention. So, and please, I'll represent us well. I mean, I hope it's great. Maybe we can come up with something beautiful. Wellfleet should have an amazing model. You know, what I don't want to see is to have our people so heavily regulated that they can't afford to go to work, and that they're introduced, that their licenses become turned into a permit situation that's transferable and sellable, and then it leaves the community. That was already mentioned in our private Facebook group about permit banks and consolidation by one of the representatives from the Cape Cod Fishermen's Alliance. So if she's bringing it up, it's already being thought about, and we need to protect our people. You know, I had Peggy Jennings sitting next to me in that meeting. She's my neighbor. And
I don't know who that is, so.
Woody Clark's wife. She's
Peggy.
Peggy,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So, like I'm here for Peggy and people like that. You know, these guys, they can figure it out. But we have a lot of people that need to be protected, and so I'll take good care. And please know, I'll do the right thing.
So what I'm thinking we should do as a Board of Selectmen is, I'm trying to write as I'm listening, and it's not working out, but that I propose that the board voices its support for our local shellfish community and our shellfish constable and our representatives on the MSI. And we could even just do a voice agreement tonight, or we could write up something more formal. But I think it would make everybody in town feel better if they knew we're watching and we're supporting you, and we don't want it changing either. You know, we've worked really hard to get it this way.
Well, we may want change, but it has to come organically out of what we need with this bunch of farmland and shellfish habitat.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm like.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not saying like this, you know, this is something that like could have been a good thing, could have been a good thing. Like, so like I said, like I didn't really get done speaking, but like, you know, I also reached out to the state today and called Chris Shilacki, who's head of our regs, you know, and he was like, we did not do a good job, like, reaching out, like, you're absolutely right, like, there may be conflicts of interest, like, so if I'm getting that from the state, at a state level, to a shell fisherman, I'm like, nope, don't want to do this, not good enough for my town, like, start over, you know? And I would do that to, like, my employee, I would do that to I would be like, if I'm doing a crappy job, gonna start over, not gonna try to, like, rescue this, you know? So, I don't know, that's all, thank you.
So do you guys, and not just you in the room, but is there consensus among the whole shellfish community and the majority? I don't know. So what I'm suggesting is that you all keep in touch, maybe form a subcommittee. And again, I know about it, but I don't know it all. You know, to talk.
Janet.
All right.
That's what the Shellfish Committee is for.
Okay.
That
good.
is the
Well,
venue. We have, and we have a good job, and they're supposed to advise us.
That everybody here has a voice on that and goes to meeting and stays up on all that, okay?
And
Good.
that we all get the people to go to the February 25th meeting and to ask good questions. Let's find out what this is, substantiate things that we think we know, right? And maybe we do know, and have it shared publicly, and, you know, go forward with that. And the thing I want to know is why they morphed into this other thing, because I'm reading all the minutes from the previous organization, and they were doing, you know, really good stuff. They were talking about things that needed to be talked about, and they had the state there listening, and it was a real good stakeholders group as far as I can make out. You know, it was doing the job. We didn't have enough people from here on it, but anyway,
We never know that.
What?
We may never have that answer.
Of why they morphed into this
Yeah,
new
we may
thing.
never know.
I actually got some of it, but I want more of it, and I'm going to get more of it tomorrow. I have, Scott Soares called me back, and I'm going to talk, I talked for about an hour to.
Okay,
Let's stop now.
So you just want
because-
to end it as it is?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys satisfied with that?
You guys are on alert now.
Yeah.
That
Well,
was
we
the
are.
point.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I thought it was a good idea for the board to affirm our support of our shellfish community and our openness to hear and so forth. I think that's important. I think the community is nervous and deserves that.
Okay, well, I would propose that the board voices its support for our local shellfish community and shellfish constable and our representatives on the MSI. Does anybody have any problem with that statement?
No, we're going to write a letter formally, or?
Well, we all agree with that?
Let's just do a motion and a sort of vote.
And we'll get, I don't know if we're ready for a letter to where to
No,
put it.
we don't need a
but
letter
yeah,
yet. We don't know what it
Know
is.
that the board
Shellfish
is behind
Advisory,
you.
probably.
Okay.
Madam Chair, would you like to add our Shellfish Advisory Committee to that?
Sure. And our Shellfish Advisory Committee.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of that proposal? Great, thank you. Thank you guys for coming.
February 25th, 7 o'clock, here.
Thank you for hearing our concerns.
No.
Thank you for bringing them to
Yeah.
us.
You know, it's kind of a painful thing here.
Yeah.
Well, we got to
Yeah.
keep our eye on it.
Well-
Yes. We got to keep our,
I've only got two, Helen.
no,
Strengthen-
our.
The communal eye, the communal eye.
We have 10.
Strengthen unity.
We
Yeah.
have 10.
All right, thank you. Good.
Bye, Richard.
Can we just go home? Can we just go home?
We could have been home a lot earlier, Helen, without you. Okay,
Madam Chair,
town administrators report.
Through you to Mr. Hort. Where are we with the DPW Assistant Director interviews?
We have completed the interviews. We've selected who we think is the best candidate. I'm currently talking to the union about a starting salary for that candidate. So
Can he be named?
not yet.
May we see his resume?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. It will come to all of you as soon as I've reached a conclusion, and I'm meeting with the WEA union tomorrow, so.
So the
Thank you.
14 days hasn't started ticking?
Correct, that is correct.
Not?
That is
No.
correct.
Thank you.
Okay,
And,
I have a question.
okay.
I've noticed that Dan was at the MMA meeting for 2 days, and you and Justine, would you, any of you care to enlighten us if you learned anything? Or did you just have dinner?
You know, the thing that I came home with the most, I think, was the last seminar I attended, which was about trying to encourage more people to get involved in government and how to get more people to serve on committees, and the need for the government to adapt to them as opposed to us expecting them to adapt to us. That was the biggest thing, and they also said, your town administrator and your board of selectmen are your recruiters for getting people on the committees, that we should be out there doing that.
And I always sort of delegate to people like on Conscom, they need somebody else, and I said, you know, you've got to start thinking about this. You've got to start talking to people. Pretend you're in your 20s and you're looking for a mate. You know, and have it be that focused. And, you know, that they sort of look at me like, what?
That usually isn't focused.
It works.
I will say, one of the things Governor Baker set up there was that last year he was really concerned about housing and community, and this year his theme is about community and education. He really wants to put his focus on education this year, which,
Just passed a huge education.
yeah, so that's really very, very good. And I also went to this incredibly boring thing on educational finance. And the whole time I'm going, oh, I can't believe I'm in this lecture. And then I said, okay, come on, learn from it. And it was great because it was really like an hour on going over how schools are budgeted and the percentage and all the different terminology. And it's always great to go to these conferences because you really do learn something new, you know? And those are kind of the two takeaways that I get from it right now.
Madam Chair, among other things, I learned how many resources there are out there, including some ones that are free, for some social media, what do you call it, freeware that makes it a manageable staff job to get posts out. So I'll be following up on that. Some resources for the Water Commission. I'm going to a meeting there. And it was really eye-opening how much resources there are, both paid consultants and also, having coffee with someone at the Cape, names and so forth. I was blown away by the resources, and I have a set of folders in my study to follow up on about who might benefit from them. It was great. There's a lot of resources and help, and it was inspiring seeing how hard people from other towns and municipalities are working. It was like going to the Girl Scouts convention.
It was really good. So a lot of it is schmoozing, and here's a little tidbit for people who always question Wellfleet. Is Justine and I were talking to this one group. They're going to remain nameless, but they were saying quite proudly how they get dredging funding every year. And then the next morning, he came up to us and said, we just didn't get funding this year. He had just heard it from their mayor. So, that's the other thing, is talking to all the people. You sit at these big tables, you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner together, and you're all talking about different things, and that came up. So, and that Massachusetts was underfunded for dredging this year. So.
Well, New Bedford wasn't underfunded for harbor
No, it was Plymouth. So let's move on.
If I can just add
And
one
move it.
thing and I'm sorry I was late this evening. I'm sitting at my computer working on the town meeting warrant and just completely lost track of time. So
It's so
Well, you were at
interesting.
work.
just wasn't until Courtney said, "Are you coming? Are you on your way?" But one of the things I want to remind listeners of is tomorrow night in this room is the Nauset Regional School District is having a forum on their building project, and it starts at 6 p.m. In this room tomorrow night.
Thank you for that reminder. Okay, topics for future discussion?
I have some.
Okay.
Okay, so we need to submit an application to SPAT for the saltwater ice machine. If we
Okay.
want to have them buy the
Good
equipment.
idea.
So we also
They're
need,
not going to just, we got to meet them halfway. We got to submit an application. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and this has come up a couple of times, and I would like to schedule a working meeting for us to have to discuss, we've got a new Courtney, we've got a new Dan, and, we have a new Dan in the sense that it's another 3 years. We're re-up. We're going to re-up. And I would like to have one of these work meetings that's, closed to the board, public can come and sit, where we talk about different issues having to do with, just the way everything's going, functionality, dysfunctionality, and sit there and talk about it in a way that we really can't hear. We can think of some general agenda item and work on it all together, and, maybe have department heads and stuff. But to try to schedule that sometime in the next month and a half. And the third thing is, guys, we have to figure out when we're going to have these intense warrant meetings. And if you remember, we kept doing it last year, and finally some of us lost our tempers and said, we have to have one meeting that's just about the warrant, because it's,
Remember that?
well, I do.
Losing our tempers?
I don't remember.
Oh, that's what you don't remember? No, I managed it, and Dennis managed it, but the point is, it's exhausting going through the warrant.
Yeah. So that
Justina?
usually
Well,
comes up,
get
in
ready.
that comes in March.
I think we worked it out to be that when we did the warrant, we were placing the article.
Yep.
We got slogged into, all right, so now are we going to approve it? Are we going to vote for it or recommend it? And what we were able to work out in that process was, let's just place the article on the warrant. Before town meeting, we had our little powwow. It's a word we've
We
used 4
discussed it,
times
yeah.
today. And then we made our recommendations.
Yes, but there was one meeting that we devoted just to the warrant. Maybe
Yeah.
there was a little
Well,
something
we
on the
should.
edge.
We could certainly, when the
Yeah.
when the
In other
warrant is
words,
ready,
please-
that could be.
So we're,
It was 36 articles on last year's
Yeah,
warrant.
I don't think
I
it's
think
going
this
to be
year there'll
this
be
much.
less.
Yeah,
I really hope
Much
so.
less.
Yeah.
Much
So,
less.
so far.
But that doesn't
So far,
mean
yeah.
that one of them won't take an hour and a half, okay? So that was the other thing.
I don't like to go into the future that way, Helen, but that's okay.
Well, you're probably right, and you probably sleep better. So anyway, the last thing is, Dick Elkin asked us for a new charge for the Energy Committee, and I suggest that we ask them to write it, right? And to consider having some alternates on there so they can make a quorum, right? The thing about alternates, just to remind everybody, you can have a committee of 5, and then you can have 3 alternates. And that means the quorum is still 3, but if you can't make a quorum out of the regular 5, you can take in one of the alternates.
Well, we might have to beat the bushes to get the alternates.
Or not. They're pretty healthy, I think.
So let's just, okay, so Dick, I know, has requested that this is already put on the next agenda.
Well, let's
of the
tell them.
February.
Forgive
Yeah.
me. Let's tell them that they have to draft a charge before then. They have to draft a charge and give it to us, and we'll vote on it, and maybe pick
Okay,
it apart.
I believe he's doing that, but yeah.
Yeah, but he didn't say he was doing it.
I will follow up with them.
Thank you. And then, last of all, I would like there to be a food truck checklist. So, no, well, we don't see it. And the whole thing about food trucks is they're not always in the same place. They have a set of things that are different than restaurants. We have some situations that have 3-year contracts for use of town property. But once again, we need to really have this standardized. It got a little better over the last year and a half. But this year, again, going into this meeting to approve SOAS, the reason you're not here is because there were 2 things that weren't okay. So let's just have there be a checklist so that when we get this on our agenda, the checklist is in the packet and we can see Board of Health, they have their hawkers peddlers license from the state. Check,
So
check,
that should be, just so Courtney knows, because this is something that you would put in our packets, that there is, so in the recent past, when we get even common victualler licenses renewal, we would have a whole, everybody approves, not DPW, police, and we haven't been getting that at all. So we've been getting these very blank backs of the pages.
We haven't been doing
so-
it for renewals. We do it when it's
Okay.
somebody new.
That's right, that's true, but I still think, well, so, you're right, you said that, so,
Yeah.
but we really do need to know that somebody's looking at it.
That's
That's-
what
I
your
guess
principal clerk
mean,
is.
we are responsible for the
Jean does.
licenses, that's
Yeah.
what,
Jean does.
yeah.
She does, and
But,
I trust.
so I would like her to at least initial it, saying she's,
Sure.
because she wasn't in the office today.
Food trucks
I
are
don't
different.
think.
I understand.
I
Yeah,
spoke
But really, everything, we
Yep.
are the licensing board, and I want to know that somebody has checked everything off. And so she could even initial the back of these and just say, everything's okay.
No, because I called her today, right? And, I'm not adversarial with Jean. I mean, she and I communicate very well about this. It was very friendly. I said, Solas, I said, do you have in hand his hawker's peddler license? Now, he has one that runs, you know what, I'm not going to
Okay,
drag our
yeah,
brains
thank
through
you.
this.
Good.
But the point is,
We
I
need all
would
this
like to
stuff.
see, because food trucks are
Understood.
different, just, not just an initial from Jean, but like if the contract,
Understood.
For food trucks, but there's got to be from everything, some kind of acknowledgement that the proper papers are in hand,
yeah,
you know?
okay.
Okay, anything else for future agenda?
Yes,
Jerry?
2 things is, I think we ought to.
Use the microphone, please.
Okay. Well,
There you go.
can you hear me out there? I think we ought to send a letter from our attorney to the news dealer stating that if we do not hear from them within a next amount of time, that we are going to move forward to take that by eminent domain. And I'm tired of screwing around with it. And we don't do anything about it. We write letters, you get no answers, you don't get any of this, and so we keep just putting it off. I think that either we're gonna do something, or then let's forget about it. That's 1. 2, have you heard anything, Dan, from Max? How's that going? Max?
Kendrick Avenue?
Kendrick
Yes.
Avenue.
Yes.
We are, the ball was in their court, but we haven't heard back from them, so I am going to be following up with them to have them come to us.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
And we also have to find money for the news dealer.
What?
For the news dealer, we have to find money, and that would have to be approved at town meeting.
Well, we may not get it in this year, but I think we ought to at least send a letter stating that we're going to move forward with eminent domain if we don't hear back from them. or police, their attorney or somebody.
Okay, anyone else for a future agenda? I don't know if Dick Elkins talked to you about this, but there should be something, do we have a policy on research remote participation? We used to have one, it was dropped, nobody wanted it. Remote participation for committees.
It's not a policy for the select board. It's a state law that we can comply with in certain ways if we want to. And when Dick was saying this, I remember very clearly all the conversation about it, all the discussion. Sure, if we want to have that again, that's fine. But you can go to the state law. Maybe somebody could send it to us. Maybe it will be me. Maybe it'll show up in your email. I really don't want to do that tonight, but it's in state law. It's in the open meeting law, and you do boom, boom, boom. And then you can do it, but that's how you have to do it. It's not a policy.
But is he asking us to develop a policy?
He wants to use, their committee wants to use remote participation. So, okay, could you?
We are planning on having
please
that on
look
the
up-
agenda for the 12th, and
Yeah.
I'll send you the information in advance so you can see it.
Yeah,
Okay, thank
if we want to do it.
Madam Chairman, we went through this discussion a few years ago.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And most of the committees, in fact, all of them that I can remember, were opposed to it.
Right,
Yes.
so that's what we'll figure out again. Dick wants us to bring it up.
Well, can't that be your answer?
No, because it was like 6 or 8 years ago, and things have changed. That was when we were putting somebody's laptop computer by Skype or something, I don't know. Communication wasn't as good as it is now. Okay, moving on to the minutes. Any corrections?
Oh, yeah. Okay, first page. By the way, Courtney, amazingly good minutes, considering that there are whole bodies of information that you have absolutely no idea about. So I'm really impressed. However, there are amendments.
Yes.
Okay. And that will.
Oh, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't do correspondence and a vacancy report. I always forget about that. Any correspondence or vacancy reports that we need to talk about? Okay, moving on to minutes.
Okay, page 1, under the announcements, open session, public comment section. And the last bullet there, insert in the top line of audience member Merrill, Mead Fox attended the bike path meeting, insert organized by concerned citizens, because it was not a town thing. It was not a town meeting. It was not anything to do with the town. The citizens organized it. Second page, top line, change naming to adding someone else to the lessees already named to the grant. That was something that it would be very hard for Courtney to get clear the first time she's doing this. And further down, 3 lines down, there's a line that starts with necessary. And insert necessary for compliance with applicable laws and regulations. It's not policy, regulation, enforcement. So, third page, third page.
Regulated to the back, huh?
Yeah. Under Shellfish Grant Renewal for Patrick Winslow, the last line, so that both grants could renew at the same time, comma, later on for business planning purposes.
Later on?
Yes, he's going to sync them up later on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Fourth page, under use of town property. That first paragraph down at the bottom line. Wilson also said that because of the time needed to set up and take down equipment, insert that there. The use of town property will actually run from October 15th through October 22nd. And fifth page, there's, this top paragraph, which was about the WAC. Third line down, they weren't suggesting as well as adding benches, and here we have in town, strike that, because they weren't suggesting that. They were just talking about the lawn, which is referred to in a very clear way before that, in that paragraph. And they weren't talking about all over town. So, 7th page. Right-of-way entry to Army Corps of Engineers. The town administrator was asked to renew the access privileges of the former Camp Wellfleet so they could continue their cleanup. Add that. It wasn't just, yeah, let them in there. 8th page. Down at the, there's a paragraph at the bottom that starts with topics for future discussion. Right above that, Port DPW Director Mark Vincent and the DPW Administrative Assistant will conduct interviews, and then add a sentence. They have met with Dennis Murphy to consider what might be needed. That was a really, really good thing that we learned about that in that section. Okay, I'm not going to give you why I'm adding it. I'm just going to do it. Topics for future discussion. Last sentence in the first bullet, she suggested it be called Future Agendas and Select Board Reports. At that point, Carlson suggested having a special work meeting for an exchange of such information. 9th page, right at the top, there's a bullet right after, there should be a bullet right after, Wilson wanted to see a request for saltwater ice machine. In that same bullet, Bacon noted that SPAT might be willing to pay for the equipment. 4 bullets down, Bacon inquired as to the timing of the open meeting law training. Hort said February. Add that, and then down at the bottom, add a bullet. And I watched this section in the video because there was a lot going on. Houck asked for an executive session about the Kendrick Avenue property. It's the only thing Courtney truly missed in this massive document, so wow. It kind of went by very fast, okay? And that's it.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Courtney. I move that we approve the minutes of Tuesday, January 15th, 2019, as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, Helen. There was something that you said that made me want to add something, but okay. Meeting to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, guys. I thought from